Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Welcome to our latest episode. In this video, we'll explore some of the history, tales, and tragic events of Maine's Acadia National Park. Join me. Let's walk and see. Now, Acadia National Park is a vast wilderness area of almost 50,000 acres that stretches along the Atlantic coastline of Maine. It is renowned as the crown jewel of the North Atlantic coast. According to park officials, it's one of the most popular national parks in the United States, drawing in approximately 3.5 million visitors annually. Acadia National Park encompasses Mount Desert Island, the largest island off the coast of Maine. The park covers about half of the island, divided into eastern and western section by some sound. In addition to Mount Desert Island, Acadia includes the Schoodic Peninsula, Isle Ho, and other outer islands. The park boasts 60 miles of pristine coastline, over 1,000 species of plants, 33 miles of scenic motor roads, 45 miles of carriage roads, and over 150 miles of hiking trails, offering countless opportunities for visitors to explore the park's natural beauty. In the 1700s, European settlers constructed roads on the island that are now part of the current trail system. However, the development of hiking trails officially began in the late 1800s when artists and early tourists, known as rusticators, started visiting the island during the warmer months. They created paths to mountain summits, which eventually evolved into modern trails. Trail maps also emerged around this time. The history of European colonization and settlement of coastal Maine is closely connected with the story of the Wabanaki people, who called Mountain Desert Island Kemetic, meaning the sloping land. They used to build conical shelters made of bark and travel in birch bark canoes. According to historical records, they stayed near the coast during summer, and in winter they moved to the interior forests. Despite facing numerous challenges, the Wabanaki people's resilience and unwavering determination ensured the survival of the native population who still reside in Maine. They continue to preserve their traditions and culture for the benefit of future generations, ensuring that their heritage endures. The National Park Service says civic groups significantly relocated and prohibited seasonal Wabanaki encampments from areas deemed necessary for other purposes, such as hotels and wharves. Charles W. Eliot, one of Acadia's founders, is widely recognized for his achievements and advocacy for eugenics. This belief was shared by many in the conservation and wilderness preservation movements of the 19th century and ultimately led to the creation of national parks. The establishment of Acadia National Park was mainly influenced by white, wealthy, Christian, and male institutions, which often overshadowed the untold stories of women, African Americans, indigenous communities, and other marginalized groups. In 1916, Charles W. Eliot, George B. Dorr, and philanthropist John D. Rockefeller donated a 5,000-acre land area as a national monument, which President Woodrow Wilson authorized. Dorr contributed an additional 5,000 acres of land to the federal government and worked towards obtaining full national park status for the monument. In 1919, President Wilson signed an act establishing Lafayette National Park and appointed Dorr as the first park superintendent. In 1929, Congress authorized the National Park Service to receive a land donation on the Schoodic Peninsula, which led to the park being renamed Acadia National Park. Presently, Acadia National Park boasts one of the most extensive hiking trail systems in the United States. Some of the most popular attractions within the park include Cadillac Mountain, Sand Beach, and Jordan Pond. Visitors can enjoy various recreational activities such as hiking, biking, camping, horseback and carriage riding, canoeing, sea kayaking, and admiring the spectacular scenery. Campfire stories from Acadia National Park include sightings of black cats with glowing red eyes, white walkers, or Bigfoot-like creatures with white fur, eerie wailing sounds, UFOs, and ghostly apparitions of mossy bearded men. Two of the most famous tales from Acadia are as follows. Anemone Cave, the Devil's Oven. Anemone Cave, more famously known as the Devil's Oven, is a seaside cave near Mount Desert Island's Schooner Head Outlook. Located along a rugged coastline, it can be dangerous. It's recommended to approach the cave with caution. The Devil's Oven has an immense interior with around 10-foot high ceilings and a dark, shadowy atmosphere. According to author Marcus Librizzi in his book Ghosts of Acadia, the cave has been the site of paranormal encounters for centuries. The Devil's Oven is a unique cave that offers stunning views of the water from the inside. According to Librizzi, the cave's exterior resembles the eye sockets of a skull and is separated into two chambers by a rocky ledge. The cliffs surrounding the cave have an uneven and jagged appearance due to the presence of iron and sulfur deposits. Unlike Acadia's smooth and worn granite shoreline, the rocks here appear pitch black in some areas due to water seepage. The waves have also created small demon caves or ovens in different spots along the base of the cliffs. The Devil's Oven is a complicated cave to access due to the rising sea tides. The National Park Service has discouraged visitors from entering the cave for several reasons. Firstly, many guests have damaged the anemones in the tide pools inside and near the cave. Secondly, the frequent rise in tides has trapped or injured visitors in the past, and rangers had to be called in to help with rescues. According to Librizzi, Native Americans reported seeing peculiar lights, such as glowing orbs or fires burning inside the cave. The indigenous people considered the cliff face on the island's north side evil and avoided it. When they had to be there, they wore protective charms and took other precautions. The rocks were thought to contain gateways to hell, with the Devil's Oven as the primary entrance. Reports of strange sightings and sounds in and around the Devil's Oven continue to be reported today by locals. Historical accounts from the 1880s describe a weird, lurid light that emanated from under the cliffs toward Frenchman Bay. Furthermore, inexplicable sounds, such as cries, strange words and chants spoken in unusual tongues, have been heard by people. Even today, fishermen have reported seeing unexplained lights burning inside the sea cavern. For centuries, it has been believed that anyone who witnesses these phantom fires will face great danger. According to Librizzi, there have been instances where people have died in the cave under excruciating circumstances. Historical records document the burning of people in the Devil's Oven, which was reserved for individuals who were perceived as being extremely evil or dangerous. The fear of eternal damnation was more significant than the fear of a painful death inside the Devil's Oven. Librizzi concludes that we may never know the number of lives lost in the Devil's Oven. Likely, these terrible rituals rarely occurred over the centuries. Next up, tragedy at Otter Cliff. Dennis R. Larson, a construction worker from Montana, returned to Maine in 1987 to reconcile with his second wife, who had previously divorced him. However, he published an advertisement in two Maine newspapers seeking a new wife. Among the three women who responded, Kathy Frost, age 25, was one of them. According to the Bangor Daily News, Kathy's family and friends described her as, quote, an extremely desperate, lonely individual who was unable to get a man, end quote. She told her friends that even though she was not in love with him, she would marry Larson, hoping to learn to love him. The couple married just a few weeks later, in September of 1987. Larson wasted no time acquiring a substantial life insurance policy for himself with an additional rider that covered his new wife for accidental death. Kathy was considering ending her marriage with Larson. However, Larson convinced her to go to Bar Harbor to work things out. Despite her reluctance, Kathy agreed to go on the trip, but her friends and family members advised her against it. During the journey, she planned to talk to Larson and tell him she wanted to end the marriage. On the evening of October 11, 1987, the Larsons went for a walk to Otter Cliff, located on Mount Desert Island. They decided to split up and explore the area separately, hoping to spot some sea otters. However, soon after, Mr. Larson heard his wife scream and rushed to find her. Unfortunately, he discovered that she had fallen off the cliff. Mr. Larson quickly returned to the road and stopped a passing vehicle to get help. He then called the park ranger's office from Jordan Pond House. Rescuers arrived at the scene and later found Kathy at the bottom of the cliff. Sadly, she was pronounced deceased at 9 p.m. According to the Bangor Daily News, during the investigation into Kathy's death, Larson returned home to Montana. Police Detective Jeffrey Harmon traveled there to question him about Kathy's demise. Larson revealed that he had pushed Kathy off the cliff in retaliation after she had shoved him and said she was leaving him. I pushed her too hard, I guess, Larson told Harmon. Larson also admitted that he pushed his first wife, Leslie R. Larson, into a stream near Wolf Creek on June 19, 1975, ending her. Since that fateful October day in 1987, it is said that on wet and foggy evenings around dusk, one may hear the solitary scream of a young bride plummeting to her demise from the high ridges of Otter Cliff. Next up, missing hikers and tragic accidents. Sean Kelly, 1993. In August 1993, Sean Kelly, a 17-year-old student from Henrico County, Virginia, was vacationing with his family and a friend in Acadia National Park when tragedy struck. According to East District Ranger Robert W. Yates, quote, Sean had been watching the surf and was hiking back to his family's tent at the island park when he slipped on gravel and tumbled, end quote. Sean fell approximately 50 feet and was unconscious when he was taken to the local hospital. He suffered head injuries and a broken wrist. He never regained consciousness. Sadly, Sean passed away later that evening after being transferred to Eastern Maine Medical Center in Bangor, Maine. Ranger Yates said, quote, people are always climbing all over the rocks here. This was just a very unfortunate accident, end quote. Douglas Rose, also 1993. In October 1993, 20-year-old Douglas Rose, a college student at Maine's College of the Atlantic, and 20-year-old Paul Ryan challenged the terrain of Great Head, one of Acadia's most difficult rock climbing areas. Douglas, sadly, became trapped. The harrowing incident is recounted below from an article in the Bangor Daily News by Diana Gradinger. According to Gradinger, Chief Ranger Norman Dodge said that the pair walked across rocky terrain for about a half an hour before descending to the cliff floor on 2 ropes after securing their equipment. At low tide, they crossed the boulders and entered the sea cave, where they attached their equipment to the top of the cave, allowing them to walk on the ceiling. Although the 2 men were experienced climbers, Ranger Dodge said they encountered problems when the high tide interfered with their climb out of the cave. To exit, the men had to make a Tarzan-type swing out of its mouth to reach the vertical ropes. The wind and wave action, the weather, and the tide seemed to come faster than they had seen it here before. The waves were coming directly into the cave, so the climbing window was shortened, Ranger Dodge said. The men realized the situation was dire and left their gear behind. Douglas could not climb back up the cliff to safety due to the combination of frigid temperatures, heavy rain, strong winds, and high tides. Ranger Dodge said the only way to access the cave was by using the same climbing rope he had used to descend just a few hours earlier. Ryan was the first to make the climb back. Ranger Dodge said, quote, he went well into the ocean before he reached the vertical line. The surf was high, and it was difficult, but he said that he cooled himself mentally and just climbed up like he ordinarily would, end quote. As Ryan reached the halfway point of the cliff, he turned to his companion and offered words of encouragement. Ranger Dodge said Douglas fixed his equipment on the rope, swung out to the vertical, and went well into the water, where there was serious wave action and surf. Although he was putting out a lot of effort and trying to climb, because of fatigue or maybe hypothermia, because they had been out in the cold all day and they were wet, he was unable to ascend the rope, end quote. According to Ranger Dodge, after spending 45 minutes trying to assist his friend, Ryan secured Douglas's rope to the cliff and proceeded to the Bar Harbor police station in the dark. He arrived at the Bar Harbor police station around 8:15 last night, and this incident happened around 5 p.m., so a long time had passed, Ranger Dodge said. Rescuers on a 40-foot boat from the U.S. Coast Guard responded to the scene. So, last night, in the blackest of downpours and with the wind howling like a hurricane, a member of Mount Desert Island Search and Rescue was able to climb down the rope to a point where he could see into the cave. He could see that Douglas was tethered on a rope and pretty much free-floating in the surf and face down, Ranger Dodge said. Rescue efforts then had to be temporarily stopped due to the treacherous weather conditions. When the efforts resumed, Ranger Dodge said this time a ranger climbed down and was able to pendulum swing into the cave. He got within 15 or 20 feet of the body when the surf really picked up. He was completely submerged 2 or 3 times, and we had to pull him up. Later that day, the rescuers returned to the site and made their way down to an area that was reachable on foot. A ranger carefully crept across the rock's face to attach safety ropes. Other rescuers would use these ropes to cross the cliff's bottom and retrieve the body safely. Ranger Dodge said the ropes the men had climbed down on had been severed by pounding wave action during the night. Douglas was finally recovered, and he was taken to a funeral home in Bar Harbor. Douglas's former college roommate, Josh Jameson, said he was a nice guy, an outdoorsman. He enjoyed his outdoor activities and did them well. He was generally a well-rounded guy, and he had a lot of friends. Next up, Robert and Margaret Croteau, 1999. Every year, 51-year-old Robert Courteau and his 63-year-old wife, Margaret, would go to Maine before the tourists arrived and after they left. It was the same in September of 1999. They liked the coast, where they would go to watch the waves roll in, a neighbor said. While standing on rocks by CO.AG Point in Acadia National Park, waiting for their picture to be taken, they were unaware that a rogue wave would rise out of the ocean and sweep them away. Their friend, Kurt Henrich, was preparing to photograph the couple, but could only look on in horror as the enormous wave swept them away to their demise. The Courteaus could not swim, and their end was ruled accidental by officials. Margaret's sister, Norma Hish, who was asked to accompany the couple on this journey but declined, said everybody loved them and we're all going to miss them. Next up, we have Emil Lynn, 2004. In October 2004, 21-year-old rock climber Emil Lynn and his friend, 21-year-old John Rudnicki, drove to Acadia National Park for a day trip to try their new climbing gear at Otter Cliff. Emil later unclipped himself to recover his climbing shoe from the ocean near Otter Cliff after it became loose. He was then hit by a wave and washed away into the pounding surf. Ranger Richard Reckholtz said he swam out, retrieved his shoe, and came back to shore. He made it back to an outcropping below Otter Cliff. A wave came and washed him back in, and he disappeared under the water. The initial search was called off after dark, but resumed the following morning. 3 Coast Guard vessels, personnel with the Bar Harbor Master's Office, 2 whale-watching boats, a Falcon jet, and a helicopter sent by the Coast Guard participated in the search. Divers with the Maine State Police and Maine Marine Patrol recovered Emil in 18 feet of water, according to Maine Patrol Lieutenant Alan Talbot. Emil's friend, John, was unharmed. Next up, Faith Wise in 2007. In June 2007, 56-year-old Faith Wise of Trefont, Michigan, visited the CO.AG Point area of Acadia National Park with her 2 daughters and 2 toy poodles when she lost her footing and slipped off granite slabs at the water's edge. As per Ranger Ed Pontbriand, Faith held a cell phone in one hand and one of the small dogs in the other. She was talking to a friend on the phone and wanted to share the sound of the waves. However, she slipped off the rocks with the dog, and both were pulled away from the shore by the tide. Ranger Pontbriand said, "There are very slippery rocks there where the tide has gone out. She slipped and fell, and just like on a slide, she slid into the water. She wasn't aware of her surroundings. I don't know if signs would have helped." Faith's daughter, Stephanie Wise, carrying another toy poodle in a backpack, went in after her mother, but sadly could not save her. Bystander Ryan Davis risked his own life to rescue Stephanie. The dog Stephanie was carrying in the backpack was able to break free and swim to shore. Officers on board a 41-foot boat dispatched by the Coast Guard pulled Faith from the water and performed CPR, but unfortunately, it was too late to revive her. The dog that was with her was not recovered. Next, Shirley Ladd in 2012. In July 2012, 22-year-old University of Maine student Shirley Ladd was hiking with a friend on Champlain Mountain's Precipice Trail. The trail is known for its challenging terrain, which rises over 1,000 feet in just 9/10 of a mile and requires physical and mental strength. Ranger Richard Reckholtz said Shirley had just finished climbing a laddered section of the Precipice Trail and was preparing to ascend another section of ladder rungs when she fell from a rock shelf onto the trail below. Reckholtz added that Shirley fell approximately 65 to 70 feet from about 2/3 away up the cliffs and landed on a switchback section of the trail immediately below, sustaining multiple injuries. Ranger Ed Pontbriand said she either missed a rung, slipped, or didn't grab a rung properly. There are people who heard her screaming as she fell. It took rescue workers at least 40 minutes to reach her after receiving the initial call for help. The 36 individuals and a life flight helicopter that landed on a mountain ledge spent more than 5 hours trying to save Shirley's life. However, despite their heroic efforts, Shirley succumbed to her injuries. According to park officials, the Precipice Trail is considered the most dangerous trail in the area. It includes several narrow ledges and iron-rung ladders to climb the mountain. Although this trail has been a popular attraction for adventure seekers since the mid-1800s, fatalities have been reported due to its difficulty level. "There are not many trails like this left in the United States," said John Tierney, a former climbing ranger at Rocky Mountain National Park. "Certainly, there are hazards, but then there are hazards in everything we do in life." Next, Mark Simon, 2016. On June 7, 2016, 60-year-old Mark Simon, a summer resident of Southwest Harbor, Maine, fell from a cliff near Thunder Hole after going out on the rocks to take photographs of the sunset, according to Acadia National Park spokesperson John Kelly. At around 7 p.m., according to officials from the National Park Service, Mark and his wife, Linda, parked their vehicle along the Park Loop Road. Mark wanted to take pictures of the sunset from a spot on the ocean path across from Old Soaker. Linda stayed behind in the car and grew worried about him when the sun went down. At approximately 9:30 p.m., Mark's wife flagged down a park ranger who happened to be on patrol. About 30 minutes later, rangers discovered Mark's backpack at the top of a 40-foot cliff. They spotted him lying motionless at the bottom between Sand Beach and Thunder Hole, and he did not respond to their calls. Due to Mark's location, the rangers requested help from the U.S. Coast Guard and Mount Desert Island Search and Rescue. The Coast Guard sent 2 boats to assist in the search. However, Mark was carried offshore by the incoming tide. The Coast Guard was able to locate and retrieve him from the water at approximately 11:30 p.m. He was then transported to the Bar Harbor Town Pier and then to the State Medical Examiner's office in Augusta, according to spokesperson Kelly. While Mark's fall seemed accidental, the National Park Service investigated to determine the circumstance of the incident. The accident occurred in an area where others have been injured in the past. Next, Adam A.J. Emmett in 2019. 45-year-old Maine resident and hiker Adam A.J. Emmett was last seen near the Schoodic Head Overlook on Monday, April 8, 2019. The next day, park rangers noticed that a vehicle had been parked in the Schooner Head Overlook since before a snowstorm the previous day. Rangers searched the immediate area but could not locate the vehicle's owner. Acadia's public affairs specialist, Christy Anastasia, told Fox News of Bangor he was last seen on Monday, and on Tuesday, after the storm we had on Monday, his vehicle was noticed as remaining at Schooner Head Overlook, so we put out a missing person to try and see if other people had information about the person. When nothing came back, the search started. On Wednesday, the authorities searched the Schooner Head and Great Head areas with law enforcement assistance and search dog teams. The Maine Warden Service and the United States Coast Guard supported the search efforts. Missing person notices were transmitted to media and news outlets to obtain information about the missing individual. On Thursday, Coast Guard boats and Maine Warden Service dog teams with Marine Patrol searched the shoreline and offshore using a fixed-wing airplane. Later on Thursday, spokesperson Anastasia said there was a person discovered in the area between Sand Beach and Thunder Hole. He was positively identified as A.J. Emmett. The cause was determined to be accidental. "This is a very sad event," said Deputy Superintendent Michael Medell. "Our thoughts go out to Mr. Emmett's family and friends." Next up, Wayne Beckford and Cassandra Caceres, 2021. In March of 2021, 28-year-old Wayne Beckford and his girlfriend, 30-year-old Cassandra Caceres of Rutland, Massachusetts, told their family members they were traveling to Maine and would return in a few days. Sadly, they would never make it home. According to news media reports, the couple arrived in Acadia National Park on Tuesday, March 16. Their last contact was on Thursday, March 18, when Cassandra informed a family member that they planned to hike Cadillac Mountain, the highest point on the U.S. eastern seaboard. However, the couple failed to check out of their hotel on March 19 and were reported missing. A search helicopter from Cape Cod was sent out to look for the pair, but they could not find them. The following day, ground searchers located the couple about 100 feet down an icy cliff on Door Mountain near Bar Harbor. Following this unfortunate incident, officials from the park reminded the public about the risk of hiking in Acadia during spring. Jay Elhard, park interpretive media specialist, said that visitors should consider the weather, planned route, equipment, and fitness level to assess the trip and be extremely cautious of their safety. Spring fever can be a little bit dicey in Acadia, especially on the premier trails that we have that are a challenge to do even in dry weather in the peak of summer, Elhard said. It's really still very wet up there, and wet conditions on granite are extraordinarily slick. Ice grippers aren't going to help you with that necessarily. It's really imperative that visitors take the time to think things through first before they embark on some of these trails. Next, Bryce Basso, 2023. On April 14, 2023, 17-year-old Brewer High Jr. Bryce Basso was hiking with friends in Acadia National Park near the Otter Cliff area when he fell 25 feet. Park rangers, police, and fire crews responded to the scene and performed CPR, but sadly, Bryce did not survive the fall. According to his friends, Bryce was doing something that he loved most, adventuring and spending time with friends. Now, this is a stark reminder that even experienced hikers can quickly face unforeseen dangers in the park. Know before you go. According to spokesperson John Kelly, falls are the leading cause of injury in Acadia National Park. During the busy summer months, park rangers have to deal with numerous simultaneous calls about hikers who have fallen and injured themselves. However, according to Kelly, most ranger assistance involves relatively minor, non-life-threatening injuries. Preparing for the unexpected is crucial to guarantee a safe and pleasant visit. Check the weather conditions in advance, carry appropriate gear and supplies, such as enough water, and be mindful of potential hazards. If you plan to be in a remote area of the park without access to cell phone service, officials recommend carrying a personal locator beacon. Park rangers offer hikes, walks, boat cruises, talks, evening amphitheater programs, and children's programs between mid-May and mid-October. They also provide opportunities to view peregrine falcons and raptors. Refer to the National Park Service website for operating hours and seasonal information. The park offers 2 campgrounds on Mount Desert Island, 1 on the Schoodic Peninsula, and 5 lean-to shelters on Isle Ho. Visitors can also find various types of lodging options in nearby towns. There is no winter camping or overnight parking allowed in Acadia. Although dogs are allowed in the park, federal law mandates that pets must be kept on a leash no longer than 6 feet. Additionally, owners must collect and dispose of their pets' waste in trash cans. It is also essential to practice proper food storage and responsible trash disposal. Visitors need to dress appropriately for the season. It's best to wear light-colored clothing, long-sleeve shirts, and long pants in the spring to protect yourself. In the summer, temperatures can range from 45 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's crucial to be prepared for sudden weather changes from warm and sunny to cold and rainy. The weather on Cadillac Mountain and other mountain peaks in Acadia can significantly differ from the temperature in places like Bar Harbor or other areas on the island. During autumn, many tourists travel to Acadia National Park to experience the magnificent colors of the park's forest. Typically, the best time to witness the fall foliage is around mid-October. You can keep track of the fall colors all over Maine by visiting the state's official fall foliage website. Moreover, you can refer to the National Park Service's trip suggestions for recommendation on the best places to view foliage within the park. In conclusion, Acadia National Park in Maine offers awe-inspiring views and exceptional outdoor activities. However, visitors need to understand the potential hazards associated with the park's natural beauty. From unpredictable weather to challenging terrains, the park commands respect and preparation. Visitors should prioritize safety by staying informed, following park rules, and thoroughly planning their trips. By acknowledging and mitigating risk, individuals can responsibly relish the wonders of Acadia National Park, ensuring an unforgettable and secure experience for themselves and future generations. Well, friends, there you have it. What do you think of these stories of Acadia National Park? I look forward to your comments, but please keep it friendly and respectful. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other, and stay safe out there. As for me, I'll see you a little further on down the trail. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time. And please, tell your pets I said hi.